Hey guys, thanks for tuning back in. Now let's get right back into the second half with divorce attorney Diana Lynch. I know a lot of times we hear about prenups when it comes to people who have a lot of money, a lot of assets, things like that. How is there a way you can protect yourself when you don't have all of that stuff? Like, is a prenup still a good thing to get even when you don't have a lot of money?
I am so glad you asked that question, because that is a common misconception. People think that you only need a prenup, and just for clarity purposes, prenup and postnup is the same thing, just one occurs before the marriage and one occurs after. And I'll tell you what is the scenario why you would get a postnup in a second. But you don't need to have assets to get a prenup. It's an estate planning tool. In fact, I wouldn't represent that you should get a trust or a will and not do a prenup. You're deciding what happens upon your death, but what happens if the marriage is dissolved not by death but by divorce? You've made no provisions for that. And the thing with a prenup, it addresses assets that are accumulated during the marriage. The general perception is that if you had assets before you got married, unless you commingle them or what have you, if it's just passive income, it's not subject to division anyway. Now, it could be used for purposes of your ability to pay alimony, but it's not marital property, right? So you don't need a prenup to protect assets that never come into the estate, right? You need that prenup to protect assets that you accumulate during the marriage or when you decide you want to commingle that. So I have a home. I want you to come into the home. I want you to enjoy the home. I don't want to worry about you taking some of the equity, or I had a business or a business idea and it's coming to fruition during our marriage. What happens with that? Also, you need it when you have outside children. What happens with that? You have it when you're dealing with, we know that we need it in a will or a trust when you have outside children in the event of your death, because obviously your heirs are not, his heirs are not your heirs, and you need to have that in there. But in divorce, what happens if you have a business interest and, that kind of thing? And so you still have to have and should have a prenuptial agreement or a postnuptial agreement as a part of your estate plan.
So let's talk about the conversation though, because if someone is dating, you're getting close to it being serious, I could kind of see how that could be a little stressful to say.
No, not for me.
No.
Ellis, I need you to sign this real quick.
So why do you all say no? Why do you say it's like not a big deal?
I guess because, I'm a financial person.
Okay.
So I look at money different. You know what I mean? So to me, I think it's better to make decisions while you're kind of sober minded.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I want to accord, not fighting.
Before you get into it.
Absolutely.
And, then it's harder to make decisions after things have been accumulated. So just go ahead and make the decision before you get it. And that way, you're not fussing and fighting.
How do you suggest your clients bring up the conversation?
Over wine and cheese. No, I'm just. I think it should come into conversations when you are just like anything else. How do you feel about children? Do you believe in God? What about that prenup? Kind of put it right in the middle. Not the last question, but like the third. Have five questions. Bookended, okay? Put it right in there, but elevate your voice when you get to that part, okay? All right, just make sure
tone is everything.
Yeah, we can work on that. We can do a podcast on just how do you bring up the prenup, okay?
Please,
but you need to do that.
Note that, please.
Yes.
Oh
and so
God.
sandwich it between some questions that you already know the answers to.
Right.
And then just kind of put it in there. But earlier in the relationship, so you kind of know how he feels about it, and then if he doesn't believe in that because of spiritual or other reasons, respect that, but then talk to somebody about putting your assets in trust or various other things to not have them come into your estate.
So if I am asking, we're at that state and I'm like, what about a prenup? Like what questions do I ask about that? Like, are you going to keep this or I'm going to keep this? Like what question type of questions do you ask?
Yeah.
Like, what's it?
That's a very good question. So if you say, look, I have a business and I have a home and you do as well, hopefully. Okay. And hopefully he doesn't have all his family in the home, but that's point aside. Okay. And so you'll say, if we were to get married, where will we live? And if you moved in, and you're here, and we were not to make it, would you think you should be entitled to some portions of the home or not? And then hear them out.
Yeah.
And then also you would say, also I have this business and I've been really working on it for many years. And, I don't want to have to, split it if something happens to you. I think that, that's my sweat equity. I don't want any of your business. I want us to kind of set out how we would deal with it if we were not together. And what about alimony? You make X, I make Y. I plan on making a whole lot more money. All right. And so we don't know where we're going from here. And I understand it's for better or for worse.
Right.
But if we're not in it together, then how do you perceive that? And a prenup or postnup does not mean they don't get anything. I've done them where they actually provide for alimony.
Absolutely.
They provide for
the ones
equitable
I've seen.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you
definitely.
after, it could be immediate. It could be after 5 years, or it could be, a myriad of factors that figure into whether or not they would get alimony or spousal support. I've seen them try to address custody. Now that's not going to work because the courts are going to override that as far as what's in the best interest of the children. Now it could factor in as far as your perception on your caregiver. So for example, say we're both great parents and we want to share. Well, you could use that to show that they coming in and saying you're unfit. Well, obviously that wasn't the case before. But other than that, the court's going to make that ultimate decision.
It's so funny because before I was like, oh, I would not have a problem until you start saying some of the questions.
That's why I was
like, my heart started.
Yeah.
Like
My answer is still no, I don't have.
Those are some difficult questions, but necessary questions to ask. Like, it's already like, look, okay, if I get this business, I don't want to share any of the money with you. Like, that's basically what you're saying.
Pretty much.
Right. But I'm just going straight there. I'm going straight there. I wouldn't say it like that.
And a lot of other factors, too.
Yeah.
And he hopefully will have his own business as well, his own thing going on. And look, I believe that you've worked hard on your business, and I don't expect you to take care of me if we were not together.
Right.
And, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so just
a respect.
You can do. And there are forms, that you can fill out. And the other part that makes prenup so hard is full disclosure. So if you do not disclose everything, it's a basis for avoiding the agreement or avoiding the agreement altogether.
And that them ass.
Yeah, so you gotta be upfront. You gotta lay it all out on the table and say, now this is what I have, so you know what you're giving up. And then you can't give it to them and say, sign it today. Or like one of my clients that said, okay, they signed it in the while they were getting dressed for the wedding. That won't work.
Yeah.
And so what happened?
Stress or duress.
We had actually done it weeks before, back and forth, did the document. It was already short in time. We got it done. I don't know why it didn't get signed. They signed it at the wedding. And what you do there's a fixer. You do a postnup to ratify the agreement that you did before. Say, okay, we're already married. There's no stress here.
Right.
I'm still agreeing to abide by the terms.
Right.
And they never did it. And I sent it over and I sent a couple of emails to cover myself. So when it's on TMZ, and they see that I drafted it.
Right.
But the sad thing is lawyers can't defend themselves. So we have to just take it.
Is there a way to protect yourself financially if you don't have a prenup?
Yeah, many. Absolutely. You could do. That was one of the things I was saying. Maybe you're setting up your business interests in trusts and various other things. There are ways where you yourself do not own the asset. Not put in your mama name. Okay, that's not if you have siblings.
Right.
That's not good idea. I'm just saying.
Let's talk off air.
Okay. Yeah. Let's think about something.
I know. Okay. So when is a postnuptial agreement appropriate? Under what circumstances?
It's the same as a prenup, but you're already married.
Right.
The one scenario I gave you where you feel like the prenup could be challenged and you want to ratify and affirm the prenuptial agreement, that would be helpful and it would just affirm the prenup. The other is where things have changed. Okay, I'm going into business, something's happened, I've had a wonderful opportunity. I want to make sure we understand how this is going to work if we are not together. And hopefully you're of the same mindset and they would still want to sign off on it.
I know you're saying about the prenup, there's forms and things you can have. Do you have to actually go to a lawyer for that? Or like, can you go to like NOLO
Legal Zoom?
Exactly.
Sign it, have it notarized.
I don't think she's going to say yes to this.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You can. It is a contract. However, part of the contract says, if you got a good one, says you either have consulted with an attorney or you waive your right to consult with an attorney. The problem is the content of which cannot be, hopefully it's written by an attorney. So hopefully it has all the bells and whistles. But the other thing, and then you better to have that than nothing.
Right.
The other thing is the duress and the fraud and all that kind of, you got the full disclosure that we usually know the steps to make sure that the challenges that often come with a prenup can be absolved before you finish. So that means they acknowledge the documents that say, hey, I'm acknowledging I got all your assets. We list them out. We make them sign off. We say, hey, they've come in our office. They had several weeks to review it. A lot of that, you lose a lot of the formality that may be necessary to prove that there was no duress and that this was a free will document. So it's, yes, you can do it, and sometimes that's better than nothing, but it's always preferable that you have those steps so that you have some people to say, hey, there was a whole process here. If he wanted to back out or she wanted to back out, they had an opportunity to do that. And that's what both lawyers kind of help. Because if you had a lawyer and your lawyer sat there and let you sign that document, the presumption is they've advised you on what it is.
Right.
So what is a common law marriage?
Doesn't exist anymore. I think I litigated one of the in Georgia. I think I litigated one of the last common law. Remember the one that did I do that online where I was telling you about the fact that we could have argued that there was no marriage, and she could sue for breach of contract to marry, or we could say there wasn't common law marriage because obviously there was no ceremonial marriage because there would be no question, right? Remember that we don't operate in the black or white, we operate in the gray, right? That's the lawyers, that's our lane, the gray area, right? That's me. And so the thing is, we had the scenario where a gentleman had brought a woman from California to Georgia and had plans to marry. And after living with her for a little while, decided it was against his best interest to do so and did not marry her. So she sued him for breach of contract to marry. And I was was suing him for her moving costs and all that sort of stuff, job given up and all that. And I was telling him, since there was information that would have, since it was pre-2007, since it was information that could have supported a common law marriage, let's say, no, you married her. Y'all were living together. Y'all were telling everybody you were married. There were some bells and whistles you had to meet in order to satisfy the common law marriage. I said, let's say you are, because we're dealing with 3 or 4 months. You've purchased nurses. You purchased nothing.
Right.
We wouldn't even need to know. We just would divorce.
Oh,
because it clearly was consummated, right? Yeah, but you would just divorce because you've accumulated no marital assets. All your assets were premarital. Nothing, and there's no breach of contract to marry if you've married. He was like, I'm not married to that woman. And we actually went through and argued that he did not breach, and they actually found that he was not common law married, so he was good with that. But he had to pay her some money for breach of contract.
Her moving.
So you said that common law doesn't exist. Does it
in
not
Georgia?
Exist
Anywhere?
In Georgia.
But
is it anywhere?
I'm sure it's somewhere.
Okay.
And let me say this: any common law marriage that would have already been established by statute, because there are some elements that you have to meet, holding yourself out as husband and wife, et cetera, children born in marriage. You don't have to have children, but that's one of the factors. If you've met that standard 20 years ago, your grandma and granddaddy never got married, but they've been together for 50 years and had 50 kids. Well, the law will honor that even today if the elements that existed established a marriage before it was abolished in Georgia.
Interesting.
But not many of those exist. We're talking 12 years.
Right.
Like
almost.
Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, like them. Because they never married, right? Like they've been together for like 50 years.
I don't think they've married either.
Yeah.
All right, let's transition to some myths and misconceptions.
Okay.
So,
hopefully I didn't start them.
So what's a common myth as it relates to divorce?
That if I committed adultery, I'm going to be punished in my divorce proceedings.
That's not true.
No.
By the
Often
court,
not.
right? 'Cause
Often not.
right.
Now,
Thank you,
now
Lucia, for
the
clarifying.
punishment, we're not talking about Ray now. We're not talking about street justice. We're talking about
Come on now.
court justice. You know, the scales. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. But that,
wanted to clarify.
Yeah, just want to clarify
Thank you.
now. I am
Thank
from
you,
Brooklyn.
Alicia.
Okay. Not street justice, but what oftentimes the courts, I'm not going to say they're immune to adultery. Okay. But I find that the courts a lot of times say, well, we're here for a reason. There are 13 grounds for divorce. One of them is irretrievably broken in Georgia. And a lot of it falls there where it's saying that's that Georgia no fault divorce. And of the others, yes, we're here for a reason. It could be mental cruelty. It could be what have you. And adultery may be one of them. Now let's see what the assets are and let's divide these things up. So unless it's egregious, I have found that I have not seen the kind of impact in the bottom line equitable division as you would think because a person's committed adultery. And they think, oh, I got you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Getting extra.
I'm like, just give me a calculator. Let me divide by 2.
I'm kidding.
Any other myths or misconceptions?
Now, I do think they believe that if they have equal time with the children, they don't pay child support. That is a myth. Because child support is determined based on your respective incomes. So unless you make the exact same thing and have the exact same expenses, then it doesn't absolve child support. There's a calculation for you while you have the children and a calculation for your spouse while they have the children and a netting potentially of that the court can make. So even though you have the children half of the time, you could still pay child support.
In all your years of experience, like, what are some continuous mistakes that you see people make when they're in the process of getting a divorce? Like, can you do something that
They
can
do not
harm
listen to
yourself?
their attorneys. The thing is, I'll tell a client, okay, we're not going to file a temporary here because you have nothing to gain in this temporary.
What is a temporary?
Where you go to court before the final and you go before the judge and say, until we get to the final, who gets the kids, who pays support, who does whatever. Well, or discovery. I'm not going to ask them for anything because you have all the assets. And I don't want them asking me for anything. So as long as they're not bothering me, guess what? I'm not going to bother them. And they will think that you are not being aggressive enough. And I've been doing this 28 years. I'm like, something, if you know she doesn't or he doesn't have anything over there and you have all the skin in the game, why put all your assets on the table?
Right.
You got to just understand that there's a reason for any or all of these things and while we can never guarantee anything, we kind of got an idea of where we're going and you don't have to spend $20,000 to get there.
You were saying earlier about don't get a hotel in Georgia.
Yes, if you're in a marriage and you decided you needed some space because you've had it, you need some peace, and peace is priceless, right?
Yes, it is.
Don't go get a hotel in the city and check in and not expect that to be used as, oh, he has receipts on his bank statement where he has hotels throughout the city, or she has and it's just as common. Or she has hotels throughout the city. I would prefer that you go to a family home and where you could be accounted, or take the kids with you to the hotel. So Junior and Siobhan were with me this whole weekend when I was in that hotel room. So it was not Sequoia. Wow. It was just in the hotel with me. Yes, we were all in there watching
girlfriend outside.
Yeah, right. Watching the Family Feud.
Are there some cases that you've heard in the news or in court where you would have handled them differently?
You're like, what in the world?
Like, why did you do it that way?
I could have got them more. That was stupid.
You know what? I try not to do that. Let me tell you why. And that's a very good question because then I can point to this. A lot of times we have individuals who will come back. You'll get an order and there are so many variables. There's so many moving pieces, right? And you enter into an agreement that you believe is equitable for your client. they'll go home and they say, well, why are you paying X? And why didn't you get the car? Or how did he get the house? Or what have you? But they don't understand that you kept $300,000 of your retirement, or that you got this, what have you, and the assets in to pull there. You can do a quadro, so obviously you can, but when you pull the money out after you've done the quadro and the money, you're going to have tax penalties. So what does that mean? I really want the free flowing cash from the house sale, and I don't want to really
that tied up.
that tied up money, because my client needs this cash flow. So you have so many variables going into play. I try not to second guess the professionals that were there around the table that made the decision based on so many other factors, because you only came in on one.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
That's fair.
so I can't say there's any case that surprises me, because I don't know all the facts.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
So let's talk about preparation. So for those people who think they've tried it all, they've exhausted it all, how do people educate themselves, about the process, or how do they know it's time for a consultation, or what homework or reading can they do?
I think a lot of stuff is on the internet. The attorneys have gone out of their way to answer questions, frequently asked questions on websites, and take a moment to yourself, not on the family computer with the kids behind you with the divorce on top of the screen, but go to a coffee shop and have a moment where you educate yourself. I don't think it's wise to talk to family and friends and all until you have enough ammunition to be able to filter some of the information that you get. If all the information you're getting is from someone who's been in a divorce or contemplating divorce or have never been there, none of those are good resources for you. Right. So, and I do think you should always try to get a consultation with a professional before you're ready to go, because there are some things you need to align. Because once we get the case, we have to take the facts as they are. So you come in, you've never gone to a PTA meeting, you've never picked the kids up from school, you traveling 50 days out of the month and they're only 30. It's or you work nights. It's very difficult to now set up a case where I can prevail on the issue of custody, because you haven't set your life up that way. And so some things would be helpful if you got a little bit of advice before you decide to start reeling out, I'm getting divorced, I'm out of here, kind of thing.
Any final words, anything you think we didn't ask or didn't cover that you're like, you know what, let me just share this one more thing?
I think that it's really important to understand that marriage is a business. You should treat it as such, give it the time and attention that it deserves. People are different. You wouldn't go into business with everyone.
Right.
You don't go into marriage with everyone. Right. And every business opportunity you don't take advantage of, right? And so if you have the opportunity to actually talk these difficult questions, these are not going to be the most difficult questions you confront in your marriage. And if you cannot address, these common questions, then how do you deal with the difficult things in difficult times?
I do have one more question.
Okay.
How has social media impacted divorce?
Oh, it is amazing. Thank you, social media.
Bam.
Thank you, Facebook.
Evidence.
I have had so much pleasure litigating in the social media era. It is so amazing what we put.
So easy,
we put on.
So easy.
Not only can we track where we are, where we've been, nothing gets erased. Everything is reposted and retweeted.
Right.
And how about I just made $1 million, or I just signed this book deal, or I just started this business.
Come on.
Not to mention the yeah.
Thank you.
And I've had it work against me where what he said, Live Nation just posted your whole tour schedule, and I'm saying you're not making any money, and I have to convince him it's promotional. So yeah, it happens. So yeah,
I can imagine, because we use social media in what we do
all the time. Amazing, amazing.
Right.
Stay off social media.
So you went on a shopping spree last night.
Yes, and
Okay.
Yes. So please stay off social media.
Yeah.
Talk to your advisor. We recommend you stay off social media, and I know it's hard.
Right.
And watch your email.
Yeah.
Nothing trash doesn't always get deleted.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't just hit delete. Go to the trash button and delete that too. And don't use your mother's name as your password, and don't expect your spouse to figure that out. Okay? And don't put your documents in the trunk. They have access to the keys on the counter. I'm just saying. And your kids are not loyal.
Okay.
Okay. They take sides.
Oh, wow.
They can be bought.
Yes, and they can be bought for very little.
God, it's so
And they play both sides of the fence. It's more lucrative that way.
wow.
I know.
Absolutely. Hey, look, she says she.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad.
Confessions. So for people who would like to get in touch with you, want to follow you, want to engage you, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm retiring in 2 years. No.
But until then.
But
Right.
until then, you can reach me. I'm in Midtown.
Okay.
I'm at 1718 Peachtree Street, Lynch Law Group, Inc. And I have a website, lynchlawgroup.com. I do have all these social media outlets and links and that kind of thing, but unfortunately I'm kind of old school, so I try to practice what I preach. Whatever's on there I didn't post.
Right.
And I cannot post any information regarding my clients, and most of my clients are celebrity and other clients, and I am very discreet. I am a vault, so I don't have anything to say. So I'll post stuff like the coffee maker and the pot, and it's really not very interesting to me, so I let other people do that. But when you go to my website, you will be able to see my social media links, and but definitely just give me a call, email me. I am always on the computer, just not on social media.
Yeah, understood.
So Diana,
from a professional perspective, not personally.
That's a little different. That's different. We're definitely not going to give that out.
No.
Yeah.
But thank you, Diana. Diana Lynch from the Lynch Law Group. I told you she was going to be amazing today.
Yes, she
I did. I
Y'all
warned
missed
them.
my singing, didn't you? But I'll do that when you ask me back. I need to work on
We
my...
may show a little bit.
But no, we're very appreciative. And I mean, although we've laughed a lot, we've learned a lot. And again, this is some very, very important points about this union, this business transaction.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for helping the listeners of Never Broke Nation. And thank y'all for tuning in to another podcast of Never Broke
thank
Nation.
you all.
Yes. Thank y'all so much.